Welcome to the special podcast series of Bridging the Gap, where emergency managers and industry experts attending the 2024 International Association of Emergency Managers come together to discuss the current and past challenges facing emergency management. Join us as we explore insightful recommendations for improving efficiency in the field through the latest trends, solutions, and expert advice. Tune into the conversation that's shaping the future of emergency management.
And we're here at the IAEM Conference with one of my old friends, Hal Grieb. Hey, Hal. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. So many of you listening might know Hal from LinkedIn and some of his projects he's been working with lately in relation to Community Lifelines. You want to tell us a little bit about the project?
Yeah. We're creating a software to operationalize the Community Lifeline construct for DHS Science and Technology. It's a tool that we've been working on for about 2.5 years, and it's set to come out at no cost to all state, local, tribes, and territories in April 2025.
That's fantastic. So what was the brainchild behind this? What was the reason you created this tool?
Yeah, so the program manager and DHS have wanted to operationalize Lifeline since the construct came out in 2018 after the 2017 storms and the chaos that was 2017. And it's really trying to make lifelines more than just a qualified idea of sticking your thumb in the air and saying, I think we're red in our energy lifeline, or communications feels like a yellow. It's how do we make repeatable, framework approached and data-driven decisions that influence lifelines to better communicate to our executives and our electeds, as well as let us kind of get under the hood of our community to know what indicators are influencing these impacts of lifelines to better prioritize and share resources.
Hal, if you don't mind, for the uninitiated that are listening to this for the first time, help explain what a lifeline is, because I think some people may have a little bit of confusion. It could be one thing, it could be another. You mentioned energy, communication, so give folks a little bit of a primer on lifelines.
Yeah,
please.
no, that's very fair. So again, in 2017, with the catastrophic national impacts, FEMA had a struggle for identifying how to prioritize scarce resources to the critical services of a community. So FEMA, under the lead of Brock Long, came out with the idea of lifelines. And at the time there was 7, now there's 8. And they identify categorical critical services that pretty much all communities share and have tied to. I can't list all 8 of them off the top of my head, but within all 8, there's components.
No, I didn't want you to.
Yeah, it's like a quiz.
Overview.
So within the lifelines, each lifelines have nested within them components, distinct components that feed into those. So like with energy, you've got fuel. You've got water services. You've got public safety, which is fire, law enforcement, and the like. So you have those identified components. And then there's also subcomponents, but really what they're trying to do is identify the what, the so what, the now what, and what's the gap.
Well, yeah, and lifelines to me, and even in my practice as a consultant, I saw them as a way for local government or even state government with smaller staffs that couldn't stand up full ESF structures, especially at the city or municipality or town level where you have like 5 people.
Yeah.
And they're all wearing 10 hats, a way to consolidate those critical services under group them in like things so that you didn't have to have 15, 16, some states 17 ESFs. You could kind of liken them to the natural groupings or natural pairings. And the other thing I saw some people trying to do with lifelines is carry that over from response, which they were built for, into recovery, because they still have some of the same attributes as the critical services.
Yeah.
So is this tool allowing for some of that flexibility if I wanted to use build some recovery planning with it as well as response?
Yeah. So the way I'm kind of a car guy. So the way I explain lifelines, right, is your ESFs, your incident support model, ICS, whatever engine's running your EOC.
That's a great analogy. I like that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
The V8.
Yeah. Some people have a V8, some people have a turbo, I4, right?
Yeah.
And some people are driving a Corvette, some people are driving a Chevette.
Yeah.
So, with that car analogy, we didn't have nationally a set of dummy lights that appears when the community, or in this analogy, the car has something going wrong in it. So the lifelines are really designed not to be a management structure per se, but to be a unifying communication structure. So when
a canary in the minefield, right?
or just drawing attention. Yeah, drawing attention, saying, "Hey,
check engine."
Check engine,
Oil
low
low.
when your battery light comes on, something in this system is going wrong. It's not
That's
your
a
battery.
fabulous analogy. No, I'm serious.
Well, when I was looking at how we describe it, I always know that at least in my purview, smarter people have usually identified a similar problem. I just need to find that similar problem to baseline off of.
Right.
And so what we're doing with CLSS is so again, the lifelines are like the big dummy lights in your communities that you need to communicate to the operator, which is your executives and electeds and the outside community. They don't know how your agency runs, but you need to alert them because they need to know how to dive deeper and ask better questions. So within the better questions, you have the components. So now that I know this light's on, I can plug in the monitor to dive deeper. And so you go to a component level. Within the component level, we have something called indicators. The indicators are customizable by jurisdiction.
Okay.
Because no indicator from even a neighboring community, one city to the county or county to county, they all have different indicators of impact that are important.
Their resources are different. Their community partners are different.
Yeah.
Their capability.
The capability of threshold. You can have, let's say in Florida, you have I-95 going through multiple different counties. Well, the impacts of I-95 from one county to another are gonna be different.
Right.
I'm going to call you Dr. Analogy from now on because there's some great visuals that I'm creating in my head.
No, it's the Texas in me, right? We're storytellers. So
I was going to say Houston, Texas versus Hallettsville, Texas.
Yeah.
And the differences between the two.
Absolutely. Huge differences.
Yeah.
And so those indicators, we've tested the CLSS. We've been...
And tell us what CLSS again is.
Yeah. So it's the Community Lifelines Status System. Again, that's the tool. Sorry, it's typical emergency manager speaking in acronyms. And what we did when I took over the project about a year and a half ago, it's a federally funded no-cost tool, right? But what we didn't want to do is come out with a tool that was for emergency management, but without any buy-in. So I didn't like that idea. That's kind of historically some of the things that may have happened. I'm not calling any agency out, but what we've done is the past year, we've made sure that we've talked to the emergency management community. We've talked to over 220 agencies. Over 500 emergency managers have seen this tool and influenced how we've built it. We wanted to make sure it's for EM by EM and not just something from the federal government. You should use it because we like it.
That harkens back to our roots together at Prefastar Software, where it was built by emergency managers for emergency managers. There's some really wonderful, smart developers out there that have no domain knowledge or expertise, so they think they know how to solve our problem, but they have no clue what the workflow is, what the impedances or hurdles are that we have to face every day. It's a staff of one. So how do I take a staff of one and create a force multiplier with a tool?
Who is all things for all people at all times.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, so what, and you've been in the industry now a long time. You started as a young kid in Florida, I think, right?
Florida National Guard was my first emergencies.
So in your time in emergency management, you've obviously evolved to and take the entire body of knowledge and put it into this tool a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are the problems facing emergency managers today that we didn't have 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
I think they're the same problems. We just have different tools to make it harder for us. I think the problem is we're paid to be paranoid, and we document our needs in multiple places. but we don't know how to operationalize it or link it to data. I think the biggest difference, if there is one, is we were under data informed back in 2005. We were still very rudimentary in collecting things for Hurricane Katrina, but now we're data saturated. So the pendulum swung, and we have no middle ground to bolt the plans, the questions and actions that we know our community has to do to the data that can be analyzed to understand the impact.
I think that's spot on.
Spot on, yeah, definitely. The thing I've noticed, and Ron, you could jump into, is since you have a lot of state and local experience as well, the thing I've noticed is we don't have data analysts in emergency management, so they don't know what to do with this volume of information. It's noise to them. So how do we take the noise and boil it down to actionable intelligence that I can share with all my stakeholders?
And to your point, Adam, that army of one, that sole emergency manager who may have maybe a little bit of part-time help, can't aggregate all that data, can't do anything with the preponderance of data because he's or she is too busy responding to the county judge, to the mayor, to the city manager, to the power outage down the street, and doing all things for all people. So I think that's a fabulous point.
Does the tool take any AI into consideration or machine learning or
not yet? This is to me, with machine learning, with AI, we have AI is about what you feed it. So if you don't have anything to feed it, it's not going to help us in emergency management.
Data.
Yeah. So what we're looking at with CLSS is this is step one in creating a data architecture that could be fed into an AI, into a machine learning, because we have never in this profession mapped. So, just as an example, you walk into an EOC. I always consider myself as an EOC director the dumbest person in the room. It's my job, and it's usually true. It's my job to look to the side and say, kaboom just happened. Fire. What does that mean to you?
Right. Well, you just have
Police.
to have stated a holiday and select.
Right.
And know which tool to pull out of the arsenal.
And so I know the questions I'm asking all of them. I need to understand what kaboom means to them. And so when I had all these talented GIS people create amazing dashboards, I would walk into my EOC and again, overwhelmed with data. I'm like, what is this dashboard or what is this map answering for me? What are the questions that influence this creation? And most of the time it's like, well, there could be any questions it's answering. And if there's any questions it's answering no questions. So what we've done is we're separating all of those layers and mapping them to the specific indicator or the question of the test.
So relevant to the Lifeline itself.
Relevant to the component and the subcomponent, you create the indicator, the question that you're asking your expert to analyze based on a data feed, the answers to the test, if you will. So when you walk in, we turn on an assessment. I know y'all can't see that if you're listening, but
this is perfect because I was going to ask you if you could give us a little bit of an example of what a Lifeline looks like.
We can overlay some graphics.
Yeah. We'll show some graphics, and you basically you have the ability within the CLSS to create templates based on hazard and or time, because 24 hours before hurricane impact is a lot different than post 72 hours impact.
That's a hell of a point.
Yeah, you're going to ask different questions, and then I'm going to have like my duty officer questions when there's a no notice. I'm going to ask a fewer amount of questions than I am for certain hazards, certain times.
Well, it seems to me it helps answer the question we all try to get to at the beginning, whether it's the local emergency manager, the state, or FEMA.
Yeah.
How bad is bad?
What is my impact and why?
Yeah.
And we can. So one of the reasons I'm really passionate about this project is when I was the Jefferson County, Colorado director of emergency management, Marshall Fire was about 1.1 miles away from my county border.
Wow.
I was off. I was on vacation time with my family at the Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey, Colorado, and I get a call from my duty officer. There's something going on with Boulder. You need to get here now. So I'm driving my Jeep Wrangler lifted in 80-mile-an-hour gusts down the mountain to get to Golden, to where our EOC is.
Having a daughter who has one, good God bless you.
Yeah, it was an experience. And there's semi trucks laying flat on their side on 470. It was pretty crazy. I've been in hurricanes, and this was a new experience. I could see the glow of the fire, and then as I'm driving into the EOC, my regional coordinator from the state, great human being, she calls me and says, "Hey, Hal, you know about the fire?" "Yep." "What are your lifelines?" And I'm like,
Huh?
"Bless your heart." Red, I don't know, yellow. You tell me. I'm driving trying to figure this out. And again, like, I was a bit snippy with her. That's, if you know me, I can be a little snippy. But it wasn't fair to her, right? The state was trying to do me a solid in assessing the
You had no
dashboard.
common language.
I had no common language. They were
Yes.
trying to get me resources. They wanted me to understand. So
Almost
that
like NIMS typing. I
correct.
mean, if we don't define
Yes.
what we're looking for,
Yes.
you can't answer that question.
yes. So that really
And not everything falls into that specifically typed
Right.
component.
and so the beauty of this, and so then I found this project and I became project manager of it, and what spoke to me was answering the question that your friends and your partners and your stakeholders want to ask: how can we help? And as I'm an emergency manager, it's too big of a question. Now, if I can have a pre-planned incident set of indicators to show impact, my duty officer can answer some questions real quick. That data feed is immediately viewable by indicator, by component, by lifeline.
So
They can look at that for me ahead of time and say, "Hey, I see that you're red in this area. I have these resources. Could you use them?"
So, but based on that,
I think you and I are thinking along the
based
same
on
lines.
That, couldn't you then do what we've been trying to do with predictive analytics and predetermine based on this indicator
Yeah.
that I'm going to need 20 shelters open, and if I need 20 shelters open, what does it look like? Shelter managers, staff, equipment.
100%. No,
supplies.
so what's crazy is we're so quick to jump to the next that we don't even realize the power of just doing that now. Like, we don't have this, no one's using CLSS yet, right? We just deployed to our first state a couple months ago. But to take your plans and operationalize it and link it to data opens the door to everything you're saying. But we still haven't touched the doorknob. Like we're so quick to jump into the room. We need to grab the doorknob first, and this is the doorknob. This is going to open the door to linking your plans that you've already written, that you've trained on, that you've created job aids for, that you have sitting on your desk, linking it to the data that you're overwhelmed with, having the answers, touch the questions, and then we can walk through to AI, and then we can have, hey, what does it look like when the data sends us a notification that we may look at the impact of an indicator? How do we then look at recovery? Now that we know our indicators are going down, then it triggers another notification of recovery operation. Now it's time to do different things like that. So it's a cool opportunity.
Going back to that question that the state asked you for the Marshall Fire, what do your lifelines look like? You're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you very briefly just walk us through how that would look now,
Sure.
considering where you are in the work that you're doing, and put yourself back in your old position, and you get that same question again? How would you answer it now?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I'm put on the spot. Let me think through this.
And take a moment if you need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. So
I mean, this fascinating discussion there's all sorts of things rolling through my head, right?
yeah. So when you think about impacts, right, you have to, because it wasn't until very recently that FEMA moved from the idea of stabilizing lifelines. They shifted away from that word to impact of lifelines, which I was a big fan of.
Yeah.
So when you think of things, you think about the impact. So there's a large wildland fire moving at 80 miles an hour in an urban setting in suburbia.
Yeah.
So what are the questions that I want to know during a fast-moving wildland fire, right? Firefighting services. Are there impacts to my ability to respond with apparatus? Are there impacts to mutual aid currently? Are there impacts to staffing right now? Because it was New Year's Eve.
Oh, wow.
Like I wasn't the only person on vacation.
Yeah.
It was December 30th.
5:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
when
it
everyone's
was
gone.
Yeah, so it's like, are there impacts to staffing? Are my abilities and capabilities, are they impacted? Like, do we have water? Do we have the MOUs? Do we have the ability to do a declaration of emergency? And like, are the lawyers there? And all these things, you can just, in the tool, it's literally a button click. So you do that quick assessment, your duty officer can run through that, and you can see real quick, we're red, yellow, green in these areas. And then that's the what and the so what. The now what is your sit rep. So now you have a starting point for your sit rep process to say, oh, we're red here. What actions do we need to take because we have major impacts in this area versus that area?
Also informs the planning P.
Informs your
So we can jump right into
exactly.
the IAP.
Yeah, and then when we send sit reps to our stakeholders, again, we're using our jargon, we're using our language between us. No one knows how to read that quickly. By putting the lifelines on top of that, now you've given an at-a-glance view that your executives and electeds can try to start talking competently to. Context.
You had no context before this. So
and
now we have context.
Yes, okay. And then if you have your components that are nested within each of those lifelines, and you have those pictures associated to your sit rep, or even your resource management tool, your incident management tool, you now can, again, the dashboard lights are connected to the engine. It's connected to your transmission.
You're aggregating all of that massive flow of data into something that's manageable and easy to understand.
Definitely. And kind of boiling it down to the bottom line up front here.
Yeah.
It sounds like from what you're telling us, what's needed in today's environment is a way to take all of this noise and all these pieces of data and information, focus them in on what makes it relevant to you as the emergency manager, the city manager, the mayor, the utility service. It's relevant to them based on those lifelines and the indicators.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the why. Like we did when the prototype was first developed earlier last year, we took the tool to the state of Idaho, and they were gracious enough to like piggyback the CLSS test environment to a public-private partnership. And when they were going through the indicators, of course, it's a no-cost tool, but there's still investment, right? You still have to plan. You still have to there's human capital you have to pay into this. So their planning leads at the state did an amazing job of meeting with all of their ESFs and crosswalking their roles and responsibilities in their CEMP to the indicators. And then we're asking for data. So here's the questions. Private sector, do you have data that fits into this question? And usually when I have asked utility companies or other agencies for data feeds, they're a little hesitant.
Oh gosh, yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, a little hesitant.
Proprietary.
Correct.
Yeah.
Proprietary.
And are they going to get to have that data that you aggregate after the fact?
Or just what are you doing with it, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I reference back to a book a lot, like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
And it was the power of why.
Yeah.
And so when the utility companies, when the private sector companies saw, you need my data to answer this question, they said, well, how about these questions? How about this data? They actually brought forward more data. They became and they wanted to give their feeds over. I showed it to a couple of utility companies here at the IAEM conference. And he said, well, some of this is proprietary. I said, that's great. But now that you know how we can use the data in emergency management, can't you create a sanitized data layer? And he goes, oh, yeah. And he would want to do that because now he is part of the solution, and his data influences how we can prioritize to help their utility get roads cleared, their utility have staff come in.
Yeah, the utilities, you bring a great point. They are so many light years ahead of us in predictive modeling.
Yeah.
They know how many vehicles, how many linemen, how many transformers they need to send forward before the storm even lands.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. And it's getting better and better.
And we need to leverage that because you mentioned data analysts. So I had a joke in a class. I was teaching a G2300 once, and we talked about data analysts. And I said, I would love for emergency managers to get this. I was like, the problem is really competent data analysts get hired by sports teams. They get hired by ESPN. They get hired insurance companies. There's a reason that the announcers can say that they have a certain percentage of yards, on the fly because there's a data analyst getting paid really good dollars, sitting in a basement somewhere doing that.
So you're saying that the high school math really does come into play later on in life?
Yeah, statistics is real.
And so
bite your tongue.
If you were to wave your magic Hal Grieb's magic wand, what one thing would you put into a tool that is missing today?
Oh my gosh. We have some amazing emergency management as a profession. Since when I started at 24, 25 now, in my 40s, we've got a lot of amazing work. To synthesize the work and operationalize, that's the unicorn. It's like you have a hazard mitigation plan, you've got your EOPs, you've got your recovery plans, you've got all that information that you work so hard with your stakeholders. To synthesize that and turn it alive and make it useful and actionable, that's what we're always trying to do. We put the brain power there. We just gotta turn the key and drive.
In other words, take all that, the voluminous plan for HMP or a CEMP or any number of plans, and turn it into, at the time of need, a playbook.
Yeah. If all my plans, if I could say, think of this hazard and create the indicators for me, man, how great would that? And find the data to link to the indicators, like find the maps and do all the work. That would be my magic button.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I'd love to have you back on the show next year when the product launches.
Yeah.
And let's see how it's going.
Sure.
Again, Adam Montella with SummitET and Bridging the Gap, along with my cohort Ron Crane and Hal Grieb.
Yeah. And
Hal, Captain Analogy Grieb.
Right.
Yeah. And just again, if you're going to the National Hurricane Conference, that's our flag in the sand. We'll be there with DHS promoting the open deployment of the CLSS tool. That's our timeline. So see us at the National Hurricane Conference.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us,
Yep,
Hal.
thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Hal.
your time.
Appreciate you, man.